I took 1,800 mental health professionals, lawyers, physicians, nurses, teachers, chaplains, cops, who came to one of my motivational speeches. Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, and California. And I asked them, how would you simplify? How would you go about simplifying? 82% gave one answer. The top ones: spend less money, more time with the family, and change jobs. 44% gave two answers. 12% gave three answers. 3% could devise a plan on how they'd simplify their life. Just said devise a plan. What would you do first? What would you do second? 3%. These are intelligent people. 3% could devise a plan. And it brings me back to one of the things that I learned is that you got to get out of psychology when you start studying psychology and go back to the roots. And one of the roots we have is philosophy. Plus, I took 3 philosophy classes when I was in Notre Dame because you had to, and I figured I'd better use that stuff. Philosophers come up with 3 great human alternatives: stagnation, collapse, and revitalization. And they say most people are in stagnation. Stagnation is an embedded consciousness. They're basically going through the motions, doing what they're supposed to do, doing things every day. They go into the shower and shave, and they don't think a second about it. They go to work the same way, the same direction. Sometimes they get at work and they go, gee, did I drive here? Did I bring X, Y, and Z? They're going through the motions. And what happens to these people, because they're going through the motions, because inertia has gotten so strong, is something bad happens and they go into collapse for a period of time. When somebody tries to move something that's had built up inertia from not movement, they go into collapse. The alternate way of living is to go into what's called revitalization. Revitalization is a constant state of change. It's putting yourself, it's putting your body into a reflective consciousness. These are old analytic terms, some of you might remember, you old analysts. Into a reflective consciousness. So I sort of see this as the story of the circus elephant. Used to be in the old days when they would train a circus elephant. You ever go by a circus and you'd see the elephant just standing in one spot? And you're saying, you know, this thing weighs like 20,000 pounds. Why can't it just move wherever it wants to move? There's a little rope. Why can't it move? Well, what they did was they trained circus elephants from when they were little baby elephants. And they trained it with a choke chain. And they put the choke chain around its leg, and they take a little stake and they pound the stake in the ground. And whenever the elephant would move, the chain would tighten, and the elephant would associate movement with pain. So they said, whenever I move, it creates a pain. And this is where the expression, an elephant never forgets. Because when it's a large elephant, most times you can't see, it's the same little chain and the same little stake holding the elephant back. Elephant's 15, 20,000 pounds, it can move wherever it wants without pain. But an elephant never forgets. And it ends up staying in one spot. Now you sit there and say, well, does that have anything to do with us? Yeah. Think about it. You've worked with marital couples. What ends up happening to them? The elephant never forgets. Oh, well, he did this 20 years ago. He did this 15 years ago. He's a scumbag. She's a scumbag. The elephant never forgets. And it always reminds me of my favorite joke, which is actually a joke I wrote, but of the duck that went in the general store. In fact, I was talking to Jim Turner about this at a different time. When you write things and you start speaking, Danny can remember this too. When you start speaking, all of a sudden your jokes get out over the air. And you can never convince anybody you wrote the joke. So the thing about the police organizations with, remember that, Danny? The police organization with the trolley cars and I worked on that for like 6 months, trying to get the timing right and so forth. I did it at a 9/11, 1-year anniversary of 9/11, and Danny heard it on the news the next day. Yeah, it just doesn't appear any longer. So this duck walks in a general store and says, "Got any grapes? I want some grapes." Guy behind the counter says, "No, we don't have any grapes, because I want some grapes." And he waddles out. The next day he walks in the general store, he says, "Got any grapes? I want some grapes." The guy behind the counter says, "No, we don't sell grapes here." Duck waddles out. "I want some grapes." Next day he walks in, he says, "Got any grapes?" The guy behind the counter saying, "Doc, we don't sell grapes here." He says, "Well, I want some grapes." He waddles out. He does that 10 days in a row. And on the 11th day, he comes walking in, the guy behind the counter tightens up, and he says, "Got any grapes? I want some grapes." And the guy behind the counter grabs him by the collar and says, "Look, Duck, we don't sell grapes here. We've never sold grapes here. And if you come in one more time and ask for grapes, I'm going to nail your stupid wet feet to the floor." Let's go to the duck. The duck says, "Well, I want some grapes." And he waddles out. Next day he comes in, he says, "You got any nails?" And the guy behind the counter says, "No." He says, "Good, you got any grapes?" The duck made a little bit of a change. Made a little bit of a change to protect himself. We call that threat assessment.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to convince you to do. Get people started on little changes. You know, you're sitting there saying, the guy's coming in, he wants to change his marriage around. He wants to become a better person. Well, let me get started. Let me start working on that. No. That's a huge task. That's going to take months and years. And he's not going to stay in therapy. Get him to make some little changes. Okay, you want to do that. Let's start you changing. Why? Because of inertia. Why? Because of relativity, because of system. We need to see what's going to happen. We need to see what's going to happen. One of my, I guess everyone's my favorite story, but this is actually a true story. I was asked to be the first person to supervise a intervention flight 800 for the FBI. They basically didn't have psychologists with experience counseling there. They wanted to have an intervention team right on site. It was on Long Island. I was well known to them. I was teaching at the academy. So they called me up and they say, "We'd like you to come down and we want you to do an intervention at the site." Flight 800 was the plane that went down sort of mysteriously off Long Island. So I was really proud of myself. I'm sitting there going, wow, it's early 90s. The FBI had never had this kind of thing. They just started an EAP program. I go down there. I borrow my girlfriend's car at the time. And I go down to the Long Island Holiday Inn at MacArthur Airport. And I'm supposed to meet the deputy director of the FBI and 2 FBI agents. So I go up to the desk and I say, I'm supposed to meet the deputy director of FBI and 2 of the FBI agents. And I'm playing with the keys to my girlfriend's car. And they say, okay, they'll be down. We'll call them right now. They'll be coming down. I know they're waiting for you, Dr. O'Miller. So I'm playing with the keys to her car. And on her keychain, she happened to have a little capsule of mace, which had a safety latch and everything on it. And I'm a pacer, in case you haven't noticed. So I'm playing with the keys to her car, thinking, okay, what am I going to say to these guys, so forth, so on. And somehow, I guess I undid the safety latch on the capsule of mace, and I spray mace all over the inside of the pocket of my pants. And I'm sitting there going, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm a psychologist. Pain is psychological. I can handle pain. It's just get your head straight. As I'm saying this, out of the elevator walks the deputy director of the FBI and 2 FBI agents. And they come over to me and they say, you know, Gary, thank you for coming down, so forth, so on. We've had a lot of incidents, people reporting that there was something going up at the plane. We need to sit and talk to you about this. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, whatever he said's fine. I've just got to concentrate because my leg is on fire at this point. Somehow I have to avoid excusing myself because my leg is on fire. So they walk over to the corner, and I walk behind them going, oh, God, this is terrible. Oh, God. They sit down, and I sit down. Now, gentlemen, you can forget about this because you already know this, but ladies, I'm going to talk to you. When a guy has that pocket, keys in his pocket, one of 2 things happens when he sits down. Either the keys fall to the outside. This happens about 90% of the time. The keys fall to the outside, and that wouldn't be a problem. But this was an inside pocket day. And I sat down, and the keys fell up against the part of my body that I really didn't want to ever get mace on. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is really bad. Holy shit, I gotta really concentrate. And I start sweating because the burning sensation is moving closer and closer to the center of my body. Meanwhile, the deputy director of the FBI, the head of the EAP, and another FBI agent are sitting there talking to me about bodies that are coming up in body bags, being pulled out of the water. They have eels in them and crabs in them, and they have all these things, and I'm sitting there sweating, going, oh my God, what am I going to do? Oh my God. And they're sitting there thinking, this guy can't handle it.
No.
And I keep saying to myself, I can handle this, I can handle it. Until I realized, if I kept saying, I can handle it, I was going to be laying on the floor of the Holiday Inn at Long Island MacArthur Airport with the deputy director of FBI and 2 FBI agents standing around me while I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, somebody please throw water on my balls! And I knew there was a lesson there. I'm not sure what the lesson was at the time, but I knew there was a lesson there. And the lesson's this. When you start hearing yourself saying, I can handle it, it's already too late. You're already in trouble. There are 4 thought processes that cause collapse. Denial, escape, helplessness, and blame. And there are 4 phrases that go along with each of these 4 areas. Denial, I can handle it, I can handle it. Escape, I just got to get out of here. Helplessness, there's nothing I can do about this, it's going to happen. And blame, this isn't my fault, it's Jack's fault. How do you use this as a therapeutic tool? Sometimes when you're teaching a class, like I've done, you just teach it outright. Sometimes you want to teach it when somebody's starting to have problems, when you're starting to hear that phrase. You want to let people know that the way to go after a problem is to go after it. Listen for the phrases, because these are the things that cause problems for police officers.